Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls. I am your host, Patricia Baker, and I'm here with my co-host who is basking in the sun of Tucson at 97 degrees. PK, I am so jealous. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I just feel so nice and toasty warm. I can't believe it. Yesterday I froze. Today it's heat. Incredible.
My gosh. Well, you can send some of it our way. We love it because it went back to winter the last 2 days.
Well, in a couple of days, it's supposed to go back to winter. So I don't know what the world's going on, but it's crazy. I'll take this warmth right now because I am sick and tired of being cold.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Me too. Me too.
Yes.
So tell us, what do we have to look forward to with the numbers?
Firstly, this is a 3-month. And the universe is in a 9-year. So it's wrapping up and ending a lot of things. But the thing about the 3, it's all about communications, creativity, and in a way to say what's on your mind. Get it out and get it over with. No point in hiding all these things because it's going to peak out when you least expect it if you're not in control of it. But the 3 months gives us a lot of energy, a lot of power, and we get a chance to shine our light on things that are different, make the world more uplifting. And 3 is creative and it's about communications of all forms. So we're all going to be working with that. So it's a good time to be a little more playful with what you do. And if there's someone in your life that you're a little fond of, nothing's going to hurt you by saying something. No point in stuffing it. And then next month when the 4 comes up, be a fault finding and a little bitchy. This way you can pet the puppy now so he's going to look forward to seeing you and being with you and all that good stuff. So the best part is if something's bothering you, because this is a 3 and it's easier to communicate, get it out now. Don't wait till next month because then you might end up regretting what you say. Not what, but how you say what you say.
Yeah, the tone is very important.
Oh, you betcha.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You betcha. Makes a big difference. But everything is about creativity right now, communications of all forms.
But we're still in a Mercury retrograde, right?
But you know what? We're going to have to deal with it anyway. So, but the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is saying the things you need to say tactfully.
Okay.
Doesn't hurt to pet the puppy and the puppy won't bite. If you don't pet that puppy, if you kick it, it's going to bite you right where you sit.
Be very nice. It always will pay you back. Let's hope anyways. So that's good. Well, let's see. What did I want to tell everybody about? Oh, follow us on TikTok, everybody. Follow us there. Follow us on Facebook. Just follow us everywhere. Instagram, the whole 9 yards. We love hearing from you. If you have a story that you want to share, be sure to contact us. Oh, and PK, you didn't even know this yet. I just got notification that we were voted onto a list of the top 70 spookiest podcasts in the world. We are number 20. So
hey. We only have 19 to go.
We don't do any advertising. I thought that was pretty good. So
anyway, it's fabulous. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah, so very excited to share that. And as you guys out there listening, tell your friends, and hopefully next time we'll be number 1. So it was a nice honor.
That definitely. It sounds fabulous. That's a feel good. Well, here we are at Creative Month and Communication. I like what we are.
That's right. Okay. Now,
good job.
What a great guest we have for everybody tonight. He was here a couple weeks ago.
Right.
He was so stupendous. I had to invite him back. because he's a prolific writer. He's got a number of books out there, and he has a bunch of topics that we'd like to cover. But tonight it's all about the third eye. So let me just give you a little info. This is Jiulio Consiglio. He is a former dental health care provider and educator turned spiritual writer and teacher. Following several personal adversities, Consiglio, while in his early 30s, experienced an unfathomable and life-altering spiritual transformation that resulted in the transcendence of the conditioned mind. His writings and teachings focus on the transformative power of inner stillness, psychic ability development, and the mind-body-spirit connection. So he has written a number of books. Last time he was here, we were talking about Finding Your Inner Healer. So that is the latest one. But he also has one on the third eye. And that's the one we're going to be talking about. Thank you, Chanel, for putting that up on the screen. We have so many people in our audience, and I'm going to include us in this too, that are fascinated by the third eye. So, Jiulio,
yes.
expert, we want to know everything. So, Jiulio, welcome to the show.
Patricia, PK, thank you so much for having me. Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here.
It is great to have you back. You are so fascinating to listen to. You have so much great information, and you're able to break it down so us simple people can understand it. So it's very appreciated, the way you talk about all these very magical, mystical, and powerful things. But basically, we've been, as a civilization, somewhat deprived of the contact, connection, whatever you want to call it, with our third eye. What went wrong? Why did this get either backburnered or abandoned? What happened?
From a broader perspective, or from an oversoul point of view, we all chose to forget to experience what it's like to be cut off from source. So in forgetting our spiritual nature, we forget who we are and where we are. So being a human being, identifying with the physical body, being distracted or externally focused is what brings our attention and awareness away from the spiritual faculties we have within us, namely the third eye, which is that commanding center. So it's the experience of being human, thinking that we are a body, thinking that we are the thinking mind that contracts our energy and closes us off from that 5D enlightened spiritual being that is already within us.
So we got closed off. We agreed to be closed off. But now we have opportunities to reconnect or become aware, as you would say, because it's more about becoming aware, right?
Absolutely. I often say, even in my books, awareness is everything. And the reason I say that is because we are actually such powerful spiritual beings that whatever we give our focus and attention to is what we give life to. So just as we have given life to the egoic thinking mind, we do have the ability to withdraw and reclaim our inner power, starve fear, and remember who we are and allow those latent spiritual faculties, the chakras, namely, to come online and really assist us and guide us to live a very fulfilling and empowering life.
There's a big difference. And you also have a book, something you've written about the inner stillness. And you mentioned last time you were here that you had a very still and quiet mind as a child, which I think is remarkable. And I'm very jealous because
Two of us.
yeah, both of us, PK and I have crazy thoughts that drive us more crazy because it just doesn't want to shut off. So it takes a lot to make it be quiet. And that is a task in and of itself, because if you can't make that quiet, then it's just impossible
That's
to
true.
make room for spiritual connections, third eye, the insights, the intuitions, right?
The thinking mind does serve a purpose, so it gives us that initial identity, but it's also that which keeps us sort of disconnected from embodying inner stillness. But there are quite a few things that you can do. Number one, bring awareness to the fact that if you're practicing observing automatic thought, automatic negative thought, realize that the observer, that is your authentic self. That's your inner being, the silent witness. So having that awareness opens the door to that expanding more. So a concept becomes tangible experience potentially. The other thing is being anchored, for example, in the present moment, moment by moment. There's so much supporting energies, clarifying energies. It's almost beyond words. And when you practice cultivating that, really living breath by breath, things begin to slow down, and you also create space between the thinking mind and your true authentic self.
There is a lot of energy that gets wasted with these thoughts that are truly meaningless and run around in our head. Think about all the energy that we could harness personally if we weren't devoting all this time and energy to those thoughts.
You nailed that right on the head, because what happens is when we are reacting to automatic negative thought, when we are expending, what we're doing is actually expending our vital energy. So we're allowing ourselves to react, and then what happens is we invite emotions such as anger, frustration, and things like that. So those not only, from one point of view, hijack our consciousness, but also perpetuates themselves by feeding off our vital energy. But there is a practice, through awareness, where you can begin to observe the thoughts and the emotions. And by doing that, rather than reacting, you reclaim your vital energy, and in the process, starve the egoic thinking mind.
That's what we need to do. It is not an easy task, but with practice, it makes a big difference. So it's important. It's people talk about the matrix, obviously, how do you get out of the matrix? Here's how you get out of the matrix, because the matrix is our own thoughts imprisoning us. So here's the power right here. But now we've had people on the show, and actually the first co-host I ever worked with on the show was Helene Olson, who was a very talented medium. And one day, Helene was, before she became a medium, she was in the grocery store. She was in Market Basket in Boston, shopping. And all of a sudden, this screen opened up in her forehead. And she saw an aunt of hers who had passed away. And the aunt was like as clear as a bell, standing in front of her in her upper third eye, talking to her just like we're talking right now. And poor Helene had never experienced anything like this. She left her shopping cart there, which is a sin,
Wow.
and she ran out of the store and called her husband on the phone, crying hysterically, saying, "I've lost my mind. When I get home, you're going to have to take me to the mental institution." And it took her some time to integrate all of that. It was a lot for her because, again, having no previous experience with any of this. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's open. So have you encountered things like that when people have these sudden openings?
I can speak from my own experience. Firstly, my spontaneous awakening was instant. The third eye activated and was shutting down automatic negative thought. That initial event silenced the ego, brought my awareness to the inner silence, like really hyper awareness. But the way things unfolded, so with the mystical events and the spontaneous healing that followed, it was a really sort of beautiful progression. To be honest, it was before my shift in consciousness. I used to have psychic events, and it would leave me wondering, like, why is this happening, or why am I having such intuition? And there are other times as well, though, where I really created a white hot desire to have an inner knowing about something, and I would have an instant sort of third eye experience where I would have a vision of something. I'll give a really brief example. Uh, the girl I was dating, I was away at school, and she was in her last year of high school, and I just started first year of college, and I was 600 miles away. I was in Ohio, and one day she's walking to school, and suddenly someone started following her. Next thing you know, he's
Wow.
chasing her. And days went on, and she had contacted me, and I was quite concerned. And then the harassing phone calls came and things like that. And he
Oh
really
my
started
God.
to get to her. So I was coming home every weekend because I actually my background is martial arts, but I grew up sort of arresting shoplifters. I'm sort of a natural. If I didn't do dentistry or hygiene, I'd probably be a police officer because I just have that natural sort of intuition and knowingness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was coming home every weekend, and finally, a few weeks went by, and we were talking on the phone, and she said, "Bell has traced where the phone calls were coming." She goes, "But I'm not going to tell you." And I said, "You're gonna tell me." And she's like, "No, I'm not gonna tell you because you're gonna come down and whatever." And I said, I really want to know. So I could feel the surge of energy building in my core. And I remember just sort of getting a little bit louder, like, I really want to know. And in an instant, a shot of energy shot up through my spine. I had a vision of a street intersection, Barton and Lottridge. And I screamed out, "Barton and Lottridge, I know where he is. It's coming from a payphone. I'm coming home."
Oh
And
boy.
the police tried finding him. Took me a few more days, but I found him and had a talk with him, and basically he didn't bother her again. But that was just an example of something where the desire was just so intense that there was really no stopping that inner knowing.
That's amazing. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yes, quite a protector
Profound.
you are. Wow, that's
I am.
wonderful. Every woman should have somebody like you that
Oh,
looks out
thank
for
you.
them. That's really
Yeah,
great.
nice.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
Um, so so you have had these spontaneous events, but in your book, I have the list here of all you have a wonderful book that really maps out a lot of exercises people can do to strengthen their connection and awareness. And they're all great, and none of them really take a long time. So, out of all of them, are there any that you think are the most powerful, or are they all powerful in and of themselves? It's just whatever your preference is?
I think number one, just exactly what you said. So whatever you're sort of drawn to, but I would say probably the most powerful practice or exercise one can utilize is the practice of challenging automatic negative thought,
Mm,
because in having my awakening and initially having that experience where I was verbally, audibly through my chest told, "Challenge your thoughts." That's what sparked the third eye, and it spoke volumes to me. So the practice of challenging negative thinking is what takes back your power. So it's one thing to observe an automatic negative thought, so you're starving the ego and aligning with your highest self, but it's a whole other thing when you begin to challenge the negativity. And just like weightlifting, just like a muscle, the more you practice it, a few weeks, a month in, it actually becomes quite automatic. So when you negate the negativity, because we're bombarded with negativity, we really need to realize what we're doing really is creating an inner balance. And the balance is between the negativity and the conscious positive self. The ramifications, though, of challenging negative thinking are far reaching, more than we really understand, because that's how powerful we are.
so can you give us an example of a negative thought that probably most of us have, and then how do you challenge it? What's the best way to challenge it?
I'd love to. Probably one of the main ones is more like a feeling of being stuck. So the
Mhm.
feeling, or being focused on circumstances and then repeating the circumstances in our minds. So you get this feeling, I'm stuck. So number one, you approach those feelings or the thought that I'm stuck, number one, by observing what you're hearing in your mind, observing it, and then make the decision. You don't have to be specific quite yet, but you start affirming, I am already moving forward. And I notice I'm starting with the I am, not that I will be, I am choosing it now. Now, it's one thing to begin to say it with a little bit of belief. You've got to cultivate this to the point where it's a matter of fact and it's knowing. But the energies that are involved, for example, when, because for years I felt stuck. I just wanted to find a way to experience relief. When someone says I'm feeling stuck, they're literally stuck at the chakra level. So a particular chakra is being impacted. And what happens is that negative energy sort of hijacks our consciousness. And so because we're unaware, and it, innocently so, we just don't have that understanding quite yet, we react. So we react to the negativity, we react to the feeling of being stuck. As human beings, we're conditioned to focus on circumstances. So it's taking a step back, observing, and then affirming your will. Because anything that sort of affirms what you really want out of life, that's being sponsored by the highest self.
Mm-hmm. So you can make almost an opposite statement. I am free. I am flexible. I'm able to move on. I am moving on from this stuck place. What about just that incessant noise that we get? Like a song gets stuck in our head. I mean, I'm talking like it runs around and around. And I mean, I've caught myself thinking about some dumb song. I'm like, why is this using up space in what is this? And then what's the best way to stop it other than saying, knock it
That,
off?
that's a great question. So what happens is when that sort of train of thought overtakes us, it's actually a signal to become incredibly present. So you don't want to resist it, because resisting it or reacting to it is sort of what will perpetuate it a little bit more. You're
Mhm.
energizing it. When that happens, you want to bring your awareness to it and just observe it. And just observe it. Bring your awareness back to the present moment. So two things. So you're bringing awareness to it, observing, because if you're really, really observing it truly, again, going back to who we really are from a spiritual standpoint, what we look at dissolves. So it may not dissolve right away, but what you're looking at and seeing the illusory nature of it, recognizing, well, this is just a tape player trying to play, try to keep me distracted. You begin to take away the energy. So eventually it will, because you're not feeding it with reaction, eventually it has nothing to do but to die energetically. So
Ah, okay.
so the two things is bring awareness and then remember the present moment, because that's being repeated, but it's already been heard, but now it's being repeated. So it's the past being projected into the future, and there's your loop, there's your stuckness. We're conditioned to bounce between past and future, where our peace, our clarity, our wisdom, getting unstuck is always a very now and present moment thing.
I would think it's a good practice to do all day long, but certainly people can make time for it right before they go to sleep at night. It's a good way to quiet the mind, clear the decks before they walk into the dream world, right? So is that something you feel is quite powerful?
That's actually quite powerful. What happens is even dedicating. So if it's at the end of the night or even middle afternoon, dedicating 15 or 20 minutes of really bringing awareness, conscious awareness, but doing it consistently. That's the key. Being consistent in your practice. I often say enlightenment is only the beginning. So you don't just awaken one time. Mastery is a moment by moment reawakening. When you experience the negativity or the unconsciousness of the ego, that's your cue to reawaken. So doing something like that before you go to sleep is a wonderful thing to sort of prepare you, number one, for probably a better sleep, but number two, sort of feeling more refreshed and invigorated for the morning.
All right. Well, that's my new thing to do. How about you, PK? You gonna
It
do that?
sounds delightful. I have a hard time because I can't shut my mind off. It just
Yeah.
continues. It's like it goes around and round. There's no stopping point. And that becomes very frustrating because then I don't feel like I'm acquiring anything new. I'm just reviewing and redoing. How does one stop that?
So with the thoughts that appear to be incessant,
Mhm.
number one is what keeps showing up, for example. So if there's a theme, for example, so let's say a particular event or someone keeps appearing, more than likely, whatever is appearing is asking to be forgiven and released. And you got to do that consciously. And you do that consciously
Mhm.
in pretty much all my books, but basically setting an intention, taking whatever emotion, recognizing the emotion that it keeps coming up, and then forgiving it, releasing it. Now, what happens is because so many years have gone by, I don't like to say that because, but I'm using it because I need to
It's
use
true.
relativity. But because years have accumulated, so the emotional energy, the momentum behind it has accumulated. What happens is it may take a little bit of time, practice to sort of let those dissolve and set them aside, let them die energetically. So whatever, very important, whatever keeps reappearing, for example, anything that's reminding you, whether it's anger, someone who trespassed against you, type of thing, it's reminding you to forgive, release, and the I can't begin to underline the power in forgiveness because it literally reverses the past.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing is that when we go back over things, we can't change it in our of what's transpiring now. But is there truly a way to feel free enough to let it go?
Absolutely. So it all comes down to desire. So one has to have the desire to let it go because number one, the ego is very seductive,
Oh,
and
yeah.
because it's such a contrast to who we truly are as spiritual beings. Your true self is silent. Your true self has never had to think because it literally is power. It is pure consciousness. It is pure creativity. The moment it sets an intention, it's instant in the unseen realm or the unified field. So the contrasting energy of the ego is very seductive. So coming to the realization that, you know what, I think I've had my fill. I've had my fill of bouncing between past and future. So
Mhm.
that desire opens the door for the highest self to have you shift into a higher space of consciousness where the ego cannot long last. So from operating through inner stillness, you may have an automatic negative thought arise, but as soon as it arises and attempts to become an emotion, because you're vibrating at such a high frequency, you're so anchored in the present moment, it dies. So as it arises, all it is a reminder now. What was once the source of my suffering is now just a reminder to reawaken again, to let something go,
Oh,
to
I
let
like
something die. Yeah.
that's wonderful.
That makes life seem a lot more palatable, shall we say?
Yes.
It does. Relief. It's the relief that I was after, and it's what we're all after. So when we have an understanding why we experience the thinking mind and its purpose ultimately,
Mhm.
then we can approach it without fear and integrate it. So it's not about you end up becoming egoless, but in that sense, it's integrated. So now use it, you know, for your preferences to make decisions or choices, but it's no
Mhm.
longer the dominating consciousness. It's now cast out and it's put in its proper place. Now inner stillness is at the forefront.
Wow. Well, this is why I guess some people experience the dark night of the soul
Mhm.
where the ego just shuts down because they give up. They're like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. This is the end of me. And then it's the ego death because then they have this transcendent experience at that time, right? It's what we're talking about is doing it more gradually. Hopefully, it's not born out of total despair. However, it might be total despair
It,
some night.
it may serve some people. So
That's for your next surprise.
so yeah, you can work at it consciously, and in doing that, believe it or not, when you're working at it consciously, like I said, it's more far reaching than we can understand. You end up potentially transcending other wake up calls because you're working consciously at negate, starving the negativity. So, you know, we're never punished for our way of thinking or our vibrational frequency from which we're operating, but everything's a mirror. So if we focus on anger, we become anger, we immediately feel anger, and because we're all one essentially. So you can't project upon anything or anyone without immediately feeling it. So when you realize that, we're not separate from each other, though it appears that way, there's really truly only oneness. Then you become very mindful of your thinking, the words you speak, and your vibrational frequency. You realize that's really your priority. That's your number one thing to focus on.
Why do we, in going through that many times, punish ourselves?
We do that for a few reasons. Number one, we don't realize that there is a level of awareness beyond the thinking mind. We are conditioned to automatically react to negativity. So we essentially, as human beings, we've only really understood what we've seen others do. So whether it was parents, a teacher, we've been trained to do really is reaction.
Mhm.
So not having the awareness, and then the reaction is why we do that to ourselves. And sometimes we punish ourselves because we haven't forgiven ourselves. So we need to really practice the self-forgiveness, because if you can't forgive yourself, release yourself of negativity, it's going to be very challenging to try to do it for someone else. So what you extend towards yourself is what you can extend towards others.
In releasing yourself, forgiving yourself, what's the first step one must make to be able to forgive themselves? Because a lot of times we carry that as this big bale of hay on our backs that we can't escape from. How does one go about doing that?
I love this question. One goes about doing that by recognizing the version of us that was behaving a certain way or doing the things that we did had no awareness, had no awareness of self, had no awareness of the ramifications of behaving in such a way. So we take on the egoic thinking mind, and it essentially operates through us. And because of that, so it's that lack of awareness. So when you understand you were operating because you didn't understand who you truly were, then you can see that former version of yourself with some compassion, and then start the process of forgiving. Because if you can do that, you truly, you will release the past. You do wipe the slate clean. It's not just about, we hear about forgive and forget.
Mhm.
I literally mean you have to forget too. So what happens is, even if you've forgiven someone, if the energy still, because it's been accumulated so much, even if it lingers, that's okay, let it, but observe it. You have to really just forgive yourself once in that essence, or someone else. And then, as if the energy comes back, tries to resurrect, that's your cue to just observe and let go.
Mm.
Very good. Wow, we have a lot to do.
Yes.
It seems like a lot, but when I compare it to operating through ego, it's a lot less complicated.
Well, it is, and you brought up a really good point too. That,
Uh-huh.
when we are more conscious and we are aware of our negative thinking and that runaround hamster wheel pattern,
Mhm.
we don't then necessarily have to experience the projection of that in our daily lives. So that's another way of breaking out of the matrix and taking charge, so that we're not just running the same nonsense. So that's really good to know, that
Mhm.
it really gives us so much more power over what we're experiencing in this universal mirror. So thank you for that. That's a good one. Yeah,
Mhm.
Happy to
really good
share
one.
that. Happy to
Yeah,
share that.
I like it.
It's
Anything that makes it easier.
God, yes,
It
I'll
does.
definitely go for easier.
It invites presence. So what we're doing is becoming aware of the mind body connection. And so when
Mhm.
we're very present, you know, when we're unguarded, when the mind is unguarded, then the ego tends to want to run rampant. But when you are very present, you're now inviting the highest self, the gatekeeper. And anything, when we're really aligned with that highest self through stillness, nothing can withstand that power because it's unconditional love. And it, like a fire, will consume anything unlike it, anything that moves.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's,
How are we able to learn to love ourselves with all this going on?
That's a great question. We learn to love ourselves by going back to what I said earlier, understanding that the way we were operating from
Mm-hmm.
was an unconscious aspect. So it was a more asleep version of ourselves. We cultivate the self-love, and this is important to mention, not in an egotistical way, but in a compassionate way. So being more gentle with ourselves, being more kind towards ourselves, as that is cultivated, you won't be able to help but emanate that and extend that to others. It's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly powerful because in doing the shadow work, you recognize the value in one's life, and you realize that you are more than deserving of living a very fulfilling life. And anything is possible when you're operating through that heart-centered space, because you're connecting the higher chakras. And I always say every moment is quite literally a potential for a third eye activation. The surrender, the desire, the wanting to know another way, that opens the door from potential to possibility.
How do we know that when we're getting these feelings that we can trust them? Because our mind is like a dartboard sometimes, and pulling in the real essence of what will help. How do we reach that stage?
I love this question. The one thing you want to look at is, number one, is it fear-based, or do you feel like you're being divinely guided? So I'll give a quick example. I went to go look at a vehicle a couple of years ago, and my soul was railing against it. I had a knot in the pit of my stomach. The guy was trying to be a bit aggressive, and I said, I literally said, I need to go to the restroom for a minute, and because it was railing against it. So I knew that was just coming from a space of, that's not for me. Whereas it, if it had been fear, oh, how am I gonna be able to do this, or how am I gonna be able to do that, or am I gonna get? So there's a difference between operating through fear, if it's fear, or if you're being divinely guided. There's a different energy to it. So it'll often be high vibrating.
Mm-hmm.
So the feeling, so when you get an initial impression of someone, you sort of, the thing is, because we're all connected through oneness, we're essentially telepathic. And the more you become aware of this, you read energy like a book. So you pick up these impressions and these feelings, and I vibe with this person, or people will say, I found, some people from my soul tribe. There's just that feeling. There's a difference between that and contracting or operating through fear, where everything that pops up, it makes you contract and you're just afraid. So there's a big difference. That takes the cultivation of discernment.
You just use the word soul tribe. How does one know their soul tribe?
The way we sort of find our soul tribe is you find people that not necessarily agree with everything that you stand for, but just resonate. There's a familiarity to it. Oftentimes, you'll connect with people and it feels like you've known them forever.
Right.
So it's letting this is very important, because we're talking about operating through energy and vibration rather than through logic and reason. We're operating through feeling, and that's what you want to connect with, the feelings, because that's all emanating from the subtle body and the soul. So you just simply know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like sometimes you'll meet somebody for the first time, and as if you've been friends for years. And other people you meet, and as soon as you do, the first thing you want to do is go out of these.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Well, this is all fantastic information. And the name of your book is what? What do we got here? The name of your third eye book, exactly.
Open your third eye.
Open your third eye. I always call it finding, but it's there already. It's been found. It just needs to open. So
Mine's wearing sunglasses, I'm afraid. I have to Make it work better.
Yeah. Now, does someone have to have their Kundalini activated in order to spark that third eye opening?
So this is important to mention. The third eye is always operating at some level, always. And the more awareness we bring to it, the more we become aware and we bring energy to it. But the final opening of the third eye, first thing I'll say, is an act of grace. It's nothing that can be forced. But what happens when that does take place is essentially we have this stored cosmic or universal energy at the base of the spine. And when activated, so when one is ready through white hot desire, I describe it as a really white hot desire, and surrender, when the timing is right, that energy will be released, travel up, and activate the chakras. You literally become lit up from inside. And the vibrational frequency, so now you're merging your local awareness with universal or cosmic consciousness. It's now integrated. So the local mind becomes one with the infinite, with the boundless mind. And that allows the third eye, the commanding center, to come online fully, silencing the ego. So the full activation of it is that Kundalini awakening, that it's that
Okay.
cosmic energy.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. And I wanted to also share with everybody that Jiulio does private sessions.
Mhm.
And I highly recommend that you book something with Jiulio. Has a number of choices on his website. And I have to say, Jiulio, I was very impressed with your ability to, again, simplify a lot of things. And a lot of times it's the simplest statements that make the most impact. And that's what I experienced with you.
Mhm.
But you also have a special skill that I haven't seen in anybody but one other person. And that is the ability to really connect to somebody's frequency to the point where they actually feel it. Now, our listeners may know and remember a show that we did not long ago about Marianne Shenefield, who I think was the ultimate genetic ET experience. She was physically blind, but in summary, very quickly, she had this inner sight that began, and she also thought she was going crazy, but
Mhm.
so many years ago before any of this was popular, but managed to make it work for her. And she could jump on somebody's frequency and tell you everything about that person. She could also affect that person's physical reality. Like, for example, I'd be in my office seeing a client and we'd smell cigarette smoke and nobody was allowed to smoke. But yet we're smelling it like somebody's in the room, like chain smoking away. So I would call Marianne. I'm like, Marianne, are you on my frequency? She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sitting here I'm so nervous and I'm smoking like a chimney. And I'm like,
Yes, I'm aware of it.
That's
yeah, thanks a
incredible.
lot. But she's the only person that I've ever met in all these years that was able to do that. Now I find you can do the same kind of thing. You have a different style, but I noticed that. And how I noticed it is I asked you at the end of our session, I said, I've been feeling really lightheaded all day. That's like not my thing. And then you said, well, because I've been tuning into you. And I went, now it makes sense. Because it was exactly as you described. You asked me, is it dizziness or is it elevation? And it was elevation because I felt like my energy was way up here. Okay. And I knew it wasn't coming from me because I was busy being it around, my house. So like, what is this? But then you told me what you were doing. That is quite a talent. And like I said, that I've never met anybody but Marianne who could do that. And that is a flexibility within you that allows you to jump onto anybody's frequency like that. And that's truly, in my opinion, a miraculous gift that you have.
Thank you. I've always done it automatically. So even as a teenager, it's just more the hyper awareness that when I'm doing it, and combined with knowing what I set my intention on is done, and that is just backed by a lot of energy.
Do you
Well,
have to be with someone to be able to exchange that kind of energy, or can, say,
Yeah.
you and I speaking at this point in time, can this transpire at this level?
There's no distance, so because we're all unified, so setting an intention, sending healing energy, there's no distance in the unified field, so it becomes very tangible at times.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, I can attest to that. So that's remarkable. And again, I want to encourage everybody to go to your website and look at the categories and see if you'd like to have a session. Julio, it will be well worth your time to do something like this with Julio. So we have a lot more to get through, but I also had discussed with you the possibility of doing a short meditation for everybody. And we've got, I don't know, let me ask Chanel how much time before we get booted off the air. Where they kick us out.
Tactful with what you
We
have.
have time, she said. Okay. So maybe we could do a 5-minute meditation. Chanel, would that work? 5 minutes? Okay. Yes, she said 5 minutes. We can do that.
Super. So what I'm being called to do basically a chakra activation exercise. So if you're down with that, we can do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great.
Okay, so basically we're gonna close our eyes and just take a few deep breaths, and I'm just gonna be guiding you. And just remember the present moment. Drop your shoulders and just relax. Just relax. I want to have you envision yourself sitting on a park bench. Temperature is perfect and the sun is shining on you. Take a few deep breaths. You're just in the moment. Just drop your shoulders again. And now I want you to imagine yourself vibrating higher. And we're going to start at the root chakra. Red represents it. So you're going to imagine a red ball of energy at the base of your spine, spinning at the perfect pace in a clockwise direction. And I want you to imagine the word activation being emitted from it. Feel yourself being anchored in the present moment. Feel the strength of being connected with Mother Earth. As that is being activated, you're going to bring your awareness slightly upward to the sacral chakra, where you're going to envision an orange ball of energy turning in a clockwise direction, spinning at the perfect speed. Feel the playfulness being emitted from it, the flow. See the word activation coming from it. Take a deep breath. Now we're going to move upward to the abdominal area. Solar plexus chakra, source of our will and our power to manifest. And you're going to envision a yellow ball of energy spinning freely with the word activating emitting from it, clockwise direction. Feel the fire, the transformative fire coming from it. Now we're going to move up to the heart chakra, green for charitable love. See it spinning in a clockwise direction. Feel the oneness, the love emitting from it with the word activation coming from it. Deep breath. We're going to move up to the throat chakra, blue in color. It's where we express our highest truths. And you're going to see a blue ball of energy spinning in a clockwise direction with the word activation coming from it. Feel clarity. Deep breath. And now we're going to bring our attention to the space between our eyebrows. Third eye chakra. The color is sort of like a purpley blue. Seat of clarity and wisdom. See that ball of energy circling clockwise direction at the perfect pace with the word activation coming from it. Deep breath. Now we're going to move to the top of the head. Crown chakra. Purple. The energy spinning in a circular direction. Connection to the highest self. Know that you are connected. Know that you are always divinely guided. Know that whatever you imagine in your mind and you see as real is actually taking place now. Deep breath. And you're just going to repeat in thought or word, I am whole and complete. Nothing has to be added to me. I am rooted in my beingness. I am fearless. I am strength and playfulness at once. I am clarity and wisdom and understanding. Drop your shoulders, take a deep breath. Remember the present moment. Now you're going to let the image go. Take a deep breath. Bring your awareness back to the here and now and open your eyes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Very
Thank
powerful.
you. Thank you, Patricia.
Yes. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're just going to have to keep bringing you back because this is wonderful and enlightening and too much fun.
Love it. I'm happy to anytime.
Oh my gosh. Well, Jiulio, you're quite extraordinary and your books are excellent. People should go. We have more books. We haven't even gotten to the rest of your books. So we've got to get to that. That gives me an excuse to invite you back. Okay.
Of course, without a doubt.
Well, this has been a wonderful and perfect evening. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yes. See, PK, I told you you'd really like him.
You were right. I didn't keep it, but he won't come.
You two are too kind and generous. I appreciate you both very much.
Oh.
Thank you.
No, it's been a delight for us.
Yes, it's an honor having you here. I've learned
Thank
so
you.
much, and I know our audience has, PK has. We've done some good work here tonight on ourselves.
Definitely.
Yes.
Love it.
So we're being told we got to wrap. So I don't want to.
Security.
I know, really.
So you have to help with the book.
And on that note, we will be back next week with another terrific show, I promise. So until then, we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.